hit the record button. And welcome to the last session. So yeah, some people haven't been able to get out and do their safe system assessment site visit, which is understandable. So we will extend out the due date for it. If you can get it in before the end of the year, do make Ken's Christmas wishes come true for his marking day. So that would be great if you can get it in next week, but if you can't, we'll extend it out to the 15th of January and we will close off the course by the end of January. So get your report in so we can mark it. If there's any feedback or any things that you might need to tweak and fix up and resubmit, then we've got time for that as well. Jump in and do any of the module quizzes as well. There's a module quiz for each of the modules, 1, 2, 3, 4 and 6. So do jump in and do those as well in the meantime. And I think that's about it from this end. If there's any questions about anything at all, type them through or send me an email. And I think that's about it, Ken.
Okay, well, I might start by seeing if anybody did want to ask any questions about their safe system assessment or make any comments about it, maybe things they're finding interesting or things that they're unsure about or things that they like. So I'll pause and see if anybody has any questions or comments at this stage. Remember, you can just pop your hand up, press the raise hand button and we can unmute you and you can have a chat to us about those, ask questions, or you can type something into the chat or the Q&A. So I'll explain what we're going to cover off this session while I give people a little bit of time to do that. Although I see a raised hand already. So
thanks, Kat.
That's all right. Good morning, team.
Okay.
Yesterday I reviewed a road safety audit as part on the client's behalf, and I could actually, they had a lot of flexible safety barrier on this site, and I could, through the training that we've done, I can understand why there's so much of this wonderful barrier, and actually went through and did a bit of a short safe systems approach on this road safety audit. So it's all starting to come together. So thank you.
Oh, that's great to hear. And yeah, so we're seeing how it pieces together. That's wonderful news. Thank you. And I think something came in the comments as well there. Okay, well, there's an actual question. Does each member of the team need to upload the report, or is it only one person to upload it? I'm okay either way, as long as it's clearly labelled in the report which team members were part of that audit team. Oh, sorry, assessment team. So I can then go and add marks to their assignment. And anything to add there, Kate?
Yeah, there's some other comments about, so easy tool to use, can see how to be valuable at our existing sites, and someone's planning to turn the course material into a checklist and take it on site.
Okay, so the one on the easy tool to use, I think is right. It is a fairly logical, easy framework to use. I think the trick is to get your head around that categorization, exposure, likelihood, and severity. And so that's why we spent quite a bit of time analyzing that, and the other trick being to come up with meaningful recommendations that address the risks, but also think wider and about that holistic system, the interaction between elements of the system, and trying to be quite comprehensive. So the checklist idea is a good one. It'd be very interesting and happy to help out and have a look at that. There's different checklists, obviously, in the back of the Austroads Guide to Road Safety Part 6, Road Safety Audit, or 6A it is at the moment, Road Safety Audit, which are associated with road safety infrastructure risk. A lot of those definitely apply. A lot of those look at the likelihood of crashes. So adding some questions around severity of crashes, speed of crashes, angles of crashes, and those sorts of things from the material would give you a very rounded, holistic, I suppose, checklist to work with. So it's a good idea.
And just confirming, we're just doing the existing conditions and then the design that we've sent everyone. In terms of considering other options, is that part of the recommendations?
Yeah, so you will just do scoring of the existing conditions and the one design we've given you. And then you will make recommendations on alterations to that design to get better alignment with safe system principles. So yeah, if you think it would be better to do a roundabout or whatever, then you put that in the recommendations section.
Okay, good. I think that's all we've got for the minute.
Okay, good. Some good questions there and some good comments. And thanks to Cav for feedback there on some of the material resonating and some real live work. That's always great to hear. And let's get a few slides up and running, but we'll continue to have anybody who wants to jump in at any point do so, hopefully. Now, Kathy, are you seeing my slides there? Yes, you're happy with that? That's good. I'm going to get my pen at the go if I can. Yes. Okay, so this is our final session, so it's a bit of a wrap up, but it's a lot of also discussion about the use of the Safe System Assessment Framework, where you get best value out of it, what sort of policy changes have happened in other jurisdictions, and how could New South Wales or your region or your local government or your group be thinking about where they could do safe system assessments and where they might add the best value. So the things we want to do this module, understand the benefits of a safe system assessment, follow the process of a safe system assessment within an infrastructure project, and explain the difference between safe system assessment and road safety audit. And Cav mentioned he was looking at an audit, and okay, so then how does that sort of thinking compare? And I'll get into that in a bit of detail, because I think road safety audits are very well established and people know how to do them and what to expect out of them. And safe system assessments are new, and so people are still getting their head around it. Remember to count your wallies. I'm going to start with a graph, which I'm going to spend a bit of time on this one because I think it tells quite a story once we understand what it's saying. And what we've got here is an assessment of 35 road safety projects that was subject to safe system assessments. They were big projects, sort of $50 million plus projects, so big duplications, big town bypasses, those sorts of big projects. And what we've got on the side here is the fatal serious injury crashes predicted. So it's a crash prediction model was used, which basically has a whole lot of things that you plug into it, and using sort of science and evidence, it predicts how many fatal serious injury crashes you would get. So IRAP is, for example, one crash prediction model you can use. There are a number of others out there. And this is for a 20-year period. So they've predicted 20 years worth of crashes. The first bar here is if no project was done at all. So they've identified the areas and they've said, right, no infrastructure upgrades at all. What contribution of death and serious injury are these areas contributing? And they said in a 20-year period, these areas would have had 344 fatalities and 7,908 serious injuries. And that takes into account growth in traffic. Then there was an analysis done on the original design that came in from the big design houses. Remember, these are big projects, so big sort of design set that comes in, and serious injuries dropped to 6,700 and fatalities down to 286 in those areas. So assuming they built it as designed and then the public used it, then there was the crash prediction model that spat those answers out. Important to note that almost all of these original designs were subject to a road safety audit. So a road safety audit team had a look at it and provided feedback. The high safe system is, after the safe system assessment was done, it looked at the design and then gave a whole lot of recommendations on improvements that could be made to get better alignment with safe system principles. And the people doing this evaluation took the highest, biggest ticket items out of that, or what they reasonably thought were changes. And that brought it down to 3,890 serious injuries and 167 fatalities over the 20 years for those jobs, if they built what that high safe system alignment, or if they made those changes that. This final one here is what was actually adopted. So the project team got that assessment, they got those recommendations, they took on some of them, they said we can't take on these others for these other reasons, and it went back up to 5,300 serious injuries and 227 fatalities. So, what does this actually tell us? Well, it gives me quite a number of insights. The first thing I note out of this is if we have a look here at the difference there. That is the road safety benefit we get from the designs that are just being churned out of the big design houses, and basically following our standards and guidelines, and we spit out something that improves road safety, and it does. So there's no denying that, and the evaluation and crash prediction says this will benefit road safety. We'll get less fatalities and less serious injuries by spending those hundreds of millions of dollars upgrading these roads, or these billions of dollars upgrading these roads. The difference between here and here is essentially what we can get with what we currently know and have available to us within the bounds of, I suppose, a few things. But there's quite a big bit there that we can still get in terms of improvements. So that's something to note. The difference between here and here, so it goes back up when the project team says, well, we can't do this, we can't do that. That's sort of the real world at present time considerations with the culture we've got and the like. So a number of these things are the project team saying, well, we can't do that because it's the community won't accept it, or we don't have enough money, or there's cultural heritage issues which preclude us from being able to do that, or whatever it might be. Though the cost, what could be anything in there. So that might need some work in a few areas, and we can come back and we'll talk about that. But the between there and there, that is the immediate benefit we get from a safe system assessment. So it's simply that using this framework and the process, the relatively simple process you've looked at, and then recommending alterations to the project to give us better alignment with safe system principles that are immediately achievable even with these challenges. That is the benefit you can get immediately from just putting safe system assessments into your process. So that's big win immediately. This one, I think we need to work on skilling up people, understanding what our community actually will accept, being a bit courageous, looking for political support, leadership support, and pushing some boundaries. This is very interesting though, isn't it? Because we just said, we're all in agreement here. The safe system is the elimination of death and serious injury, or getting us very close to that elimination of death and serious injury. But even our high safe system things that we're putting into safe system assessment reports only bring us a certain way towards that. And the reason for this is that quite a few of the things that are going into safe system assessments are really the best we know of with infrastructure improvements to align highly with safe system principles. But we know that people are using the roads in all sorts of ways that the infrastructure just cannot cater for. And so the crash prediction model that was used is smart enough to understand that people are going to be driving excessive speeds at some points. We're going to have people drug affected. We're going to have some, really sort of challenging behaviour out there, and that the infrastructure, while doing a really good job here, there is limitations on what we currently know and are able to do. So this, to me, becomes this challenge, or the way we're going to need to sort of work on this is to continue to pull the lever on other elements of our system in terms of behavioural change initiatives, enforcement, vehicle technology, getting better vehicle technology, really leveraging off as much of that as we can, but also coming up with innovative infrastructure treatments that get us more than what we currently are getting. So we can't think we're going, building what we currently know about, like lots of flexible barriers and roundabouts, is going to get us to zero. It's going to drop things really significantly, but we need to, continue to work on this. So that's a very interesting outcome. You'd think that high safe system alignment would bring us down to pretty close to zero, but what with our current knowledge and the existing behaviours and vehicle fleets and the like, we've still got a lot of work to do. So this one, that's good. That's sort of maybe, well, what I'd like to see is the designs coming off the production line, getting us much closer to this point. And so we need to work on that through alterations to standards and guidelines, but also capacity, capability building within the designers, the project managers and others to ensure that from the get-go, these are better. And we've seen that with road safety audits play out in a pretty impressive way over the 25 or 27 years. Road safety audits have been an integral part of our infrastructure projects, where we see that when a road safety audit is undertaken, it feeds back into the design team and they hopefully incorporate ideas, and then their next design is much better in terms of not making the same mistakes. So what we're thinking is that safe system assessments will do the same. The safe system assessment report will come back in, the the designers will get that, and then the next one they do might, you know, bring the score down to here, and so we'll see a better alignment. So I think the educational opportunities with a safe system assessment are shouldn't be something that that are ignored. So there, I suppose, a few takeaway messages I got, but I'll open it up and see if anybody else is taking away different messages from this.
Ken, there's a question here about if someone has a crash following the adopted project and it was found in the safe system assessment model that that type of crash could be prevented, how does that stand litigiously?
So it is an interesting question, and I have to, you know, put a disclaimer that I'm not a legal expert, but I have done quite a bit of work in that space from being involved in different legal cases. It's really going to be a bit of a challenge, I think, going forward, how this plays out. The first thing I'd say is that there is a good Transport for New South Wales legal report that the Centre for Road Safety got done that basically shows if you know something safer can be reasonably done and you don't do it and you justify not doing it, that it meets standards or guidelines, that you can still be held to account on that. So your responsibility is to do the safest thing that is practically possible within the constraints that you have. And it doesn't matter whether there's standards or guidelines that say something different if you've got something safer. The real, I suppose, kicker in that statement is that reasonably practical or practicable statement, which is where things will get murky. So the courts are completely understanding of limitations on funds and the like. So this is where it'll be a really grey area that we just have to play out in court in terms of what is reasonable. So we could say, well, we're going to make the Great Western Highway 40 kilometres an hour for the whole thing. We know it's going to be safer, but is that reasonably practicable? The answer is probably no, and could probably easily be shown in court why that's not. So that's the challenge we'll face, because that's obviously an extreme example, but you'll roll into that in terms of dollar value, in terms of public acceptance, in terms of whole raft of features. The safe system assessment recommendations are probably not going to are going to be something that would be taken into account. The courts would look at this is what a professional has said in this field. Why did you not take that on? But it'll, again, if there's practical reasons why it couldn't be done that the assessor would not be across, that'll probably be justification. So I can't see, even with engineering registration bills and the like coming in, I highly doubt there'll be people being locked away for this. But I think that there are some, I suppose, maybe ethical reasons and moral reasons why we should be pushing at a lot of this. It's not that far different to road safety auditing, really. I mean, if the auditor puts something forward and the project team doesn't do it, but justifies why they haven't done it for cost reasons or for other reasons, or that they've done something else to reduce risk, that's played out many times in courts and been accepted by the courts as a practical justification for why things haven't happened. But There have been incidents where, though, it was deemed that it could easily be done, and it wasn't going to be a major impact on one reason or another, and then it should have been done. So the road authorities have been held to account in those situations.
Thanks, Ken. And just another comment here. Tracy was in a value management workshop last week, and the traffic safety team presented an SSA analysis. It was really good, and so early in the project was terrific. Yeah,
that's wonderful to hear. The values management workshops, or the sort of optioneering phase, multi-criteria analysis, it's wonderful that we can have some scores that go into those now for the safety implications. I do always say, well, the safety should be trumping all else, but I have to realise that I'm sort of a fanatic in that perspective, and that the environmental people will also say, well, environmental sustainability trumps all, and then the cultural heritage people say the cultural heritage trumps all, and then the cost people say, well, it's cost is going to trump everything. So I've got to accept that we're a piece in a very complex puzzle on these sorts of things, but isn't it wonderful that we have this ability now to at least come to the table with something quantitative that puts some scores out there for different options and that people can discuss. But I do always say, when I'm providing those to that sort of workshop, that it doesn't end here. Like, okay, you've got one of the options which has a lower score than other options, or you've scored them all. Every one of those can be a lower score if we do some of these extra features. So don't think, okay, I've done my safe system assessment, push that in. This one was chosen, which is good, and now we're done. Well, no, it's now take that and look at the recommendations on that one and try to bring the scores even further down and implement some of those alterations to the infrastructure, but also some of those wider elements that may have been identified in the safe system assessment that could be working with the local school or the nursing home and how they might use the facility. It could be things around the enforcement and building in enforcement capability into that area from the start. There's no limit to what you can think of that could improve road safety at that holistic system perspective.
Lance has got his hand up, so I'll just check if got a comment.
Hi, Kath.
Hi,
Lance.
Hi. Just wanted to say I like your graph because the story there is more about how you're influencing the outcome, or the safe system assessment is influencing the outcome. And I guess it's likely to be more effective if the safe system assessment's treated like the road safety audits are, where they're required to undertake an assessment as a part of their brief. But the other part that's a key to success, I guess, with both of those is where the sign off to the assessments, whether it be road safety audit or safe systems, isn't done by the project management team, it's done by the client. And the process in New South Wales with road safety audits is where the project responds to the audit with their recommendations, and they put those to the client to say, well, here's our assessment, what do you want to do? We've made some suggestions or whatever. And that allows scope for things that, say, are just outside your budget or just can't be done to be treated fairly, and that ultimately the golden rule is the person holding the gold makes the rules. So the client gets to decide on what they do. And that leads to that other question about legal issues, is that all the assessment is doing is making a recommendation. It's not deciding to do the work. It's not anything more than that. It's a recommendation to the people making the decisions. But again, the auditors should be reasonable and I guess not come up with too crazy ideas. Early days in New South Wales with road safety audits there was this thought that the audit outcomes became non-conformance reports and had to be corrected regardless, and the list just got forever and ever longer until we gave up the idea. So in any event, I think it's likely that, yes, you will influence the original design. Any design is likely to be better than no project. And the more benefits that we can demonstrate, whether that be through the actual proposal, safe system assessments, whatever, adds to the benefits of doing the work and the benefits to the community. The one good thing about getting acceptance of safe system assessments is that you come up with a simple scoring mechanism and you come up with some suggestions about what might be done. And that makes it far easier for a project team to do something with the outcome. And again, it's putting the meat on the bones of the safe systems discussion. And when it first came up in New South Wales, we had a whole heap of people who touted the safe system coming out, and they showed the New Zealand video and they had no answers about what you might do with such a thing in New South Wales. So now we're finally seeing a tool that comes up with that. So that's good. And just as an aside, I'm currently working on a star rating for a small job locally here, about $2 billion worth. And the hope is that we're going to influence the safety outcome. And I think we will achieve that simply by raising some issues. And we'll follow the example of your chart there. I'm fairly certain of that. Anyway.
Well, that's great to hear that's happening. Certainly star rating, as you said there, Lance, is one of the other tools we can use to sort of leverage off getting better outcomes. And that's something we're doing a lot more of these days, star rating designs and roads. We've sort of linked up with IRAP to get and got accredited to do all of that. And it's another great tool in the scheme. But the one thing I did really pick up there, Lance, is this idea that these recommendations are just recommendations. And in fact, even if you looked at the intricate wording of the templates you got, they didn't even actually call them recommendations. They called them considerations. Because it's exactly as you say, you're providing this advice to a project and you want them to take on these ideas, but it is their project and they've got this massive raft of challenges to work with. So the more we can push it down, the better, but acknowledging that those limitations.
Yeah, and as I say, it's about influencing and informing, I guess, for a start, so that those people who make the decisions can hopefully make them with more data. One of the other things, I guess, that's common with most projects is that it's very much vehicle orientated. And the safe system assessment, I think, is a way of bringing in consideration of other road users, even though that may be small. If, say, it's a rural road project and there's really is no pedestrians or cyclists, at least you're still showing that you've thought about it. Mm. And I think that's a healthy thing. The other, I guess, observation is that road safety audits in more recent times have almost gravitated back to a design audit, certainly in New South Wales.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. And I mean, a couple of the slides I'm about to show, I think, are really going to resonate exactly in the stuff we're talking about here, Lance. It's there's a few challenges.
And again, on major projects, quite often the main driver isn't necessarily safety. It's, say a town bypass or something like that. In the end, you've still got to deliver a bypass. hopefully a safer one than what was originally proposed. So, you know, we need to make sure that we still deliver it. And I think in one of the earlier sessions, we spoke about movement and place. Excuse me. And it's a relatively new concept in New South Wales. Not sure about Victoria. It's probably a bit earlier there because you tend to do that sort of thing. Is that ultimately you have still got to have something that's fit for purpose.
Yeah.
And you can't, I guess, make too great a call on what you'd like to see, because you may have basically ruled out the whole purpose of the job if you go that way. So you've got to be realistic, I think, as well.
Yeah, and that initial work you do in understanding the desires of the project, what the outcomes are trying to achieve, and those sorts of things can help you in the choices on or in those recommendations you make. So that's good.
Yeah. Don't be too crazy. Anyway, should get off the line.
No, it's wonderful input, and the rooster in the background wants input as well. It sounds like.
Yeah. There's probably 5 grandkids as well. There he is again.
Yeah. All right. Good. Thanks,
Okay.
Lance, and I'll encourage others to jump on the line at any point and have a discussion. I'm going to keep moving on. That was good though, and it actually primes us up for a couple of things I want to talk about, because this is out of a document about safe system assessments. One of the sets of guidelines that says that it's a way of determining how well a project aligns with safe system principles, and that's been something that's really been craved. As Lance said there, you know, we saw the 20-minute New Zealand video, or we had some executive spout out some high-level lines about the importance of eliminating death and serious injury and human tolerance for physical force. But what does it mean on the ground? And so this really helps us understand and quantify that. And the idea that there's a spectrum and there's better alignment and worse alignment has been very helpful as well. A method for comparing project design options, and we heard there about the ability to inject that into multi-criteria assessments or values management workshops and those sorts of things. A wonderful benefit there. Information on design changes that'll move the project closer to the safe system objectives of eliminating fatality and serious injury. So that ability to inject some new ideas in, some thinking, some alterations, to influence, to nudge, all of that good stuff. Methods to assist planners, designers, project managers to move the safe system approach from theory to practice. There it is, isn't it? That's the real thing we want. It's a practical tool. And I suppose one of the reasons the Centre for Road Safety and Transport for New South Wales wanted us to come and be pushing this product or this tool and to train people up to use it themselves and be sustainable to be able to do that is for this exact reasons. It takes it gives that clarity. It's a tool. It makes a lot of us more comfortable when we've got a tool to use this, to not just have to go in these abstract theories. So that's been a good thing, and a sound basis for future planning and design of infrastructure. So I think we've got some real advantages there, but I wanted to talk a bit about the process of doing a safe system assessment. Now, it's going to be fairly driven by some of the jurisdictions that have started to implement more formalised processes, and as we talked about earlier, like New South Wales has been a little bit slow out of the blocks, but I think we might sort of see the Usain Bolt happen with New South Wales. A bit slow out of the blocks, but it's just going to shoot past all the other jurisdictions with the amount of safe system assessments you do and the formalisation of that into projects because of the value that people understand you can get out of these if they're done right and if they're an accepted and embraced part of a project process. So the first thing really is around when in a project do you do a safe system assessment? And again, it was great to get that comment in earlier saying, great to see it happen early in the project, values management style stage, comparing options, injecting this stuff in early on. And that's where you see safe system assessments are valuable. Concept planning, early stage, sort of this some strange terminology used here, but that's all right. Road safety audits still play a big role, and in those billion-dollar jobs that were being talked about and the like, we're going to see road safety audits still provide wonderful value and inject safety into the project. But they're at that quite detailed level, and a detailed design, definitely a road safety audit is the one to be doing. There's a couple of reasons I think that's the right one. I mean, you could use the safe system assessment process and it would still produce ideas and changes and the like. The scoring, though, in the scheme of things, probably wouldn't change much on a lot of the detailed design changes. So I don't know, I'll pick anything. I'll go with a barrier end terminal. Okay, so you've got the project comes in and it's got gating redirective energy absorbing terminals proposed, and you look at them and they're proposing a specific product type, let's say an ET2000 plus, which is a type of end terminal, and you look at that and you go, well, as a road safety auditor, actually it doesn't matter. You say, well, we now operate under MASH, which is a way of which is an assessment framework, and products need to be accepted under MASH, and so then an ET2000 is not a MASH product; it's the older design. That we need to go to the ETSS, being the equivalent MASH product, which has a higher energy threshold. It's going to redirect the vehicle. It's going to be a little bit safer. The ET2000, the earlier one, is not by any means unsafe. It's just we can get a little bit more out of the system. The audit is going to pick up these things. The auditor should be picking up that, absolutely, and we can get a little bit more out of it. In a safe system assessment, that is not going to change anything in terms of your scores and the graphs that come out. I mean, you might put that as some notes on some recommendations, but it's not. You're going to see no difference if they did all the old end terminals or all the new end terminals. It's not enough in terms of a change to give you an actual score change. But the audit's not quite set up like that, so it's just a more appropriate tool. So that's one of the reasons. The other reason is that the safe system assessment, as I hope you're finding out as you're doing them, gives you the freedom to do some pretty open changes or suggestions for changes to the project. And it can be big. It can be major alterations to the form of intersections or the cross section being used. You're recommending these big picture changes. And if you've got the detailed designs done, or a project's got the detailed designs done, and they're asking you to do a safe system assessment at that stage, and you're coming back and saying, well, your intersection, you're proposing signalized intersections here, and they're going to be operating at 70 or 80 kilometers per hour, and that's well above the safe system energy thresholds, and thus we recommend either they're converted to signalized roundabouts, or there's raised platforms put in to bring speeds down or the like. They're just going to, there's no way they're making those changes after they're into detailed design. That's well beyond that. The scope is locked in. What they're expecting is minor tweaks in terms of the design at that stage. And so you need to establish these big picture things back at this stage of any project. And I think you all know that from being involved in any of these types of projects. I suppose you can utilize this framework for a variety of purposes in terms of scale. So you could use on whole communities or areas or programs, but you can use it on things that are in the existing road. So I should have a little arrow somewhere down here, the existing road. You could do fatality investigations using the framework. You could do existing roads to help identify scope of projects that you might like to look at from a safety perspective. So there is some versatility in these extra levels. But I suggest you play around with it, use it on different things, see if it adds value, if it doesn't add value, and make some decisions accordingly. So integration, I'm just reading a question that's coming in now. Integration of safe system into major projects will require significant cultural shift, particularly when it comes to temporary works and traffic staging. Yeah, I agree with that. I think that for us to think that a safe system assessment will get us everything in terms of cultural change and sort of that vision of where we'd like things to be, we're going to need a lot more than just this. It's one piece of the puzzle. We need lots of training, lots of cultural change initiatives. We need lots of work being done with different individuals within the projects and directors and the like. How do you change a culture? Well, it takes time, it takes a lot of effort and resources. But I think we've got this tool, we've got things like star ratings, which are going to help us. We've got audits, and we've got then lots of training programs that sort of targeted executives or management or engineering level or designers, tech officers, so we can continue to just make this something that's being pushed. You look back at other industries and the way that they've integrated well into those major projects and those sorts of things. Occupational health and safety is probably a pretty good one. It's become a very accepted part of major projects, and no compromises on worker safety. Well, no major compromises. That it's generally done fairly well. Environmental management, again, another one that's sort of gone leaps and bounds in terms of how it's managed. Cultural heritage as well. So, these industries can change in terms of culture. I mean, the environmental one, for example, well, that's been some legislative alterations, and then it's been locked in a few ways. So I think there is hope to change and to continue to improve in these sorts of things. So we'll continue to work on it. This is a little table that just shows the difference between safe system assessments and road safety audits. Now, there's a bit of grey area in a lot of this, but it was taken out of the Victorian document. So issues that influence the impact of likelihood of crashes will both do that, and do that very well. Identifies issues that impact the severity of crashes. So the audit is got a sometimes, and the audit's definitely the assessment is definitely there. The audit sometimes, I suppose, a lot of the audits we see are assuming compliance or just fixated on the likelihood. So this is, again, the traffic signals one. Traffic signal 80 kilometres an hour. The audits come in and they make recommendations around sight distance to the signals, or the number of aspects, or the use, mast arms, or back of queue issues. These are all really important things in this project, but they are, even when those things are all correct, we're going to still see people running that red light, and we need to think about the severity, and that's very rarely picked up in audits as a sort of defined element in its own place. I mean, it can come into the risk rating of the findings. So, if there's not a mast arm, well, what does that mean? Well, it means that they may miss it and then crash, and what's the speed and the severity. But in terms of then altering that to influence and recommend changes to the severity outcomes is not done. It's just try better to stop people running the red lights, which is good. I'm not saying we ignore that. We should do everything we can. But we need to acknowledge that even doing the best we can, some people will still run the red light, and we need to try to influence the outcome. Identify issues that impact the exposure to crashes. Well, this is very rarely, if ever, done in an audit as a distinct element. It's just incorporated into the thought about likelihood usually. And then the reason it's a great thing to have it as its own isolated element is because it draws people to trying to think about closing roads, closing accesses, altering these exposure elements, which isn't as clearly thought about in an audit. Provides recommendations for improved road safety outcomes. Well, put a yes there. I mean, this is a yes there because every other jurisdiction, the auditors provide the recommendations. New South Wales doesn't, or gets it in a separate memo. But generally, you know, that's the outcome, and that's across the board. Considers all road users. They absolutely should be doing that. Focuses on fatal and serious injury only. Well, the audit does often pick up a whole lot of minor things, which that's fine, and they're good at detailed design. But when we look at audits that have hundreds and hundreds of recommendations, and I would say that 95% of them, or sometimes more, are not going to make a lick of difference in terms of the fatal serious injury outcomes of the project. Doesn't mean they're not important things that we should be incorporating, but these are things like the trip, little trip hazards, the DDA compliance, some of the standards things. I think we need to get all this right, and there's good reasons for this. But if we got all of the DDA or all of the trip hazards out of all of the crossings and footpaths in New South Wales, it's not going to make much difference to fatal serious injury numbers in pedestrians in New South Wales. It's not. So we need to be, thinking bigger than that. But that being said, when you're doing a project and you're spending all that money, you want to get this right, and so the audit can provide value in that. But the safe system assessment is that bigger picture, looking for that step change. The focus on all crashes, so that's just the opposite of what we just talked about. Investigate safer vehicles. Audits really don't usually, I mean, you do consider what are the vehicle types and things like that, but then getting into any ideas on potential changes to things that may help there. Safer people, sometimes the audits do that, and thinking about, well, what's behaviour, where the desire lines, where the intoxicated, the pedestrians intoxicated, but there's more enhanced focus on that in the assessment. Maintenance, can the road be maintained and the like? I'd say sometimes in an audit, it's probably better to say sometimes within a safe system assessment is one of those questions. It's embedded in one of those. Can it be maintained safely? Post-crash care. So this I don't think I've ever seen in an audit where the auditor is considering what happens when there's an incident and how will the emergency services get here, and can they operate efficiently and safely, and these sorts of questions. Recommendations to redesign the project if required. Well, by redesign, it's sort of big picture stuff. Audits tend to not be in that space. They're just identifying risks and sort of pointing projects at some possible tweaks, whereas the assessment is more conducive to bigger picture changes. Encourages innovative designs to improve harm minimization. I think just a safe system assessment is well set up for more freedom for that innovation, more freedom in terms of when an innovative project comes forward, that it's assessed on its sort of safe system merits rather than its compliance with a design standard, which is where a lot of auditors would tend to gravitate. That, this is different, it's new, it doesn't conform with standards and guidelines, and that would influence sort of the way it was viewed. The assessment's far more scalable in terms of communities, programs, routes, anything can really be put under that framework. I'll pause there and see if there's any questions before I launch into sort of the process of a safe system assessment within an infrastructure project.
Thanks, Ken. Comment and a question. Safety and design environmental approvals have their roots in current legislation. Unfortunately, RSA and SSA are limited to internal policy. Perhaps one day they'll fall under legislation of their own.
Yes, I think you're very right there in the sense that that is a big driver. The subjective nature of road safety, or how it has been in the past, has been a big limiting factor in the ability to legislate. This sort of stuff helps us out significantly. Star ratings do. I mean, I think that we have an established star rating system now. We have providers available like ourselves who can star rate according with a internationally accepted methodology, and it's, you know, so you're going to get the same outcome regardless of which accredited provider you get in terms of your star rating. That then starts to give us a window into the ability to legislate. And so, you know, just mandating, well, IRAP will say 3 stars or better, but maybe we can say, well, 5 stars or better for the you know, what are your road categorizations? R1s, I think, are your biggest major big ones, and, you know, maybe, you know, something like that. So that is, there's a possibility to that. I think safe system assessments at this stage and road safety audits, they could be put into legislation as must be done, but, you know, by who, how are they done, and what are they used for? It becomes a bit more problematic. But I think at least we're a step closer with the assessment framework than we are with just audits, or even before that with just opinion on what's a good safety thing to do. R6 is the highest. Yeah, okay, 5, yeah, thank you. Thanks, Lance. I got them the wrong way around.
And just a quick one, just a quick explanation of what a DDA is.
Oh, yeah, sorry. It may be called something different in New South Wales. So it's the Disability Discrimination Act, which is what it's called in Queensland and Victoria and New Zealand and other areas where they have state acts on making sure your infrastructure provides facilities for all road users, including those with different abilities, so blind, wheelchairs, and the like. So checking your ramp grades, having your tactile ground surface indicators, and those sorts of features, which are really important part of projects and ensuring it's accessible for all road users. But I can tell you, if you meet every single requirement of these acts, we're still going to have a massive amount of pedestrian trauma, because, you know, there's the inherently unsafe aspects of high-speed vehicles and you know, and pedestrians crossing, and intoxicated pedestrians, and people in areas where things will go wrong. But I think people sometimes get a bit annoyed with me on this aspect, because I'm not belittling it. I'm just saying that it's important for other reasons. I hope that clarifies that one. Let me take you through the process that Victoria, South Australia, Queensland's using as well, this one, and New Zealand. We were just chatting to them earlier about the process, which is going to be fairly similar as well. Now, I think this process might be you might be fairly comfortable with this process, but let's see. So you determine the type of safe system assessment to be done. And I haven't even explained that there's a couple of different types of safe system assessment, but we heard from Cav earlier that he said that he did a little bit of a quick safe system assessment on what was happening. Well, it's certainly something that a lot of people started to do once they were given this framework, and hence the development of this thing called a rapid safe system assessment, which is just taking a few of the elements to give us a rapid indication of things. And then there's a full safe system assessment, which has all of those wider elements to it. I'll take you through the specific differences shortly. I would say that a rapid is probably about half the resources and time required. There's still a fair bit to do in a rapid, but just a full's got more to it. But this is where the client is making the call based on whatever it is, policy or preference. That's what we want. That's what we want done. And then the selection of the safe system assessment team done again by the client or the design team that's been engaged, depending on the client's, they may say, we want you to design this and get an independent safe system assessment done as part of the project. That may be the way it's done. And so they will engage, hopefully, people who understand the framework, have some experience with it, have been through some training on how to use the framework to get things right and consistent and provide good input. So hopefully a lot of the design team will be turning to yourselves after this to be saying, well, can you get involved in this to make sure we're doing everything right? There's some sort of commencement meeting discussion, and also within that, the understanding of the scope and the desire and the aspirations of the project. Lance said it beautifully that we need to work with the aspirations of these projects. Coming in with things that completely contradict what is trying to be achieved from a strategic planning, from a project planning, from a network planning perspective, we're just going to be pushed out. There'll be no change that'll happen, and the whole process will erode. Understand the project context. We can achieve really high alignment with safe system principles with any context that they put down. It's just very different ways to go about it. So spend the time to understand the project, the context, and get that good understanding of it. As I mentioned before, the way I mentioned this in the last module, the way I like to do this is to first of all send the pre-written questions that were in the Australian Safe System Assessment Framework, say, here's some questions about the context of the project, can you fill these out? And then I say, can we have a meeting, a workshop? I used to do the workshops in person, and we'd roll out the roll plot of the concept or the area, and we'd all stand around and chat about it and ask all these questions. Now I'll sort of do that on Zoom or something, but you could do it in person. That would be good, and you get a real understanding of that. Ask lots of questions. Why this way? What's this area used for? Where are the local schools? Where are the local pubs? What are the pedestrian desire lines? Where are they going from? Where are they going to? What's the speed? What speed? Have you made any commitments on the speed limit of the project, of the area once the project's finished? All of that sort of stuff. Flesh it out. Get a good understanding. Then you've sort of looking at all your documentation, reviewing things, getting an understanding, and get out and you go to the site. And you've all done that, or some of you are still to do it, and some of you may need to wait till it stops raining before you can get out there and the flood water subsides. But you do get an extra appreciation. We know this from road safety audits, but certainly same thing with safe system assessments. You get a richer appreciation for how the road operates, what road users are, how they're using it, other challenges. And so it's good to get out there and just stand back and observe and just watch it for a bit of time. Take a bit of time, watch it, get yourself comfortable. The ones I love is when we've got a safe system assessment at a site and there's a cafe on the corner or something, and we can just sit for an hour and have a coffee and the team and just chat about it and watch it. And advantage with that is you're nice and seated and safe in a way. You can take your high-vis vest off, which often changes people's behaviour a little bit, but it gets you a nice understanding of the operation of the site. You complete the matrix, which you are all getting familiar with now, hopefully, and you get the scoring coming out of that. You do that for the existing conditions. You do it for any designs that are available that they want assessed. If you're just doing an existing site, there's no designs. It's, maybe you're doing it as a scoping exercise. You just do a matrix on the existing conditions. You use that to identify areas that are presenting higher risks than other, and you make recommendations accordingly. If you're doing fatality investigation or like, that's exactly how you'd sort of use it. You consider the other elements of the SAFE system using those qualitative questions. Often people will do this bit maybe even before the matrix sometimes, in order to maybe alter anything in the matrix, but I sort of tend to think that that's a bit of an iterative process. You do those questions, then you go back, so I'm going to adjust that score and add in this extra dot point because of this reason or this other reason. You come up with treatments that you believe will improve alignment with safe system principles, and you document those in. You write that up using those templates. I mean, we do want to see a consistent output of safe system assessments. So there's templates available. You can freely rebrand those, take them, do whatever you want with them, but just try to make sure you're covering off those subheadings using the matrix, using the graph in the, so everybody who picks one of these up sees the same output. And that's going to get us much further entrenched in the industry if we're seeing the same stuff happening. Then respond to any suggested treatment changes, and that's back to the client. And as we were talking about there with Lance, it's about them making decisions on which can be incorporated, which other things that'll be done to alter or try and get these scores down if things can't be achieved. And then amendments to the design and incorporating them in the project. If we're not doing that last step, then there's no point in the whole thing. It's a waste of everybody's time and resources. We should, if there's not a genuine desire to actually try to improve things. Some people often do an extra step in here where it's sort of feeds back at this stage where the report's been written. There's a series of recommendations. That should actually probably be in here. Series of recommendations. And they say, right, actually, we're now going to change the project. We're going to add a roundabout here. We're going to install some barrier here. We're going to do a wide center line here. Can you rescore that for us? And then you go back here. You do another matrix with the final accepted design. You run it through. You can maybe still make some recommendations, but what you'll get then is a graph where they'll have sort of the existing conditions, the design that was originally produced, and then, hopefully the final adopted one after safe system assessment. So you'd obviously have lots of these. But that shows a nice little story to any approver as well, doesn't it? We were improving things, but we've gone through this process and it's improving things even more. So it's a good story. The other thing on that, which I haven't really mentioned too much, is that when you do a safe system assessment, if you are uncertain or the project team hasn't made a decision yet, assume the worst. So take, for example, they're doing a new set of traffic signals and you go, well, is it going to be a fully controlled right turn? Is it going to be red arrow or not? And they go, well, we haven't made that decision. We're at a fairly early concept stage. We just, we'll do some traffic modeling and we'll do this and we'll work it out. So I'd always assume it's not, and then make it as a recommendation, and then they can commit to that, and then they can see some good improvements. If they say, oh yeah, no, it'll probably be that we haven't decided, you know, and then it doesn't happen, then we're losing that influence of the assessment framework. If if they do say yes, yep, it's absolutely, it's going to be a fully controlled right turn, then you sort of write that into the matrix, and it's the factor that reduces. So it's clear that if down the track they take it out, well, the scores are different now, or would be different, because that was part of the reason why you made that score what it was made, and why you didn't recommend that as a treatment option, because it was already in the scope. So any questions or comments on that process? And the reason I say I think some of you will be quite comfortable with this process is because it pretty much follows a road safety audit process within a project. And that was an intentional decision made to have it something that people would be familiar with. Everybody's comfortable with how a road safety audit plays out in a infrastructure project, and it follows a very similar process.
Ken, can you tell us, is there a site inspection required for a rapid assessment?
So there's not, and I do have a slide coming up which actually compares the requirements of each. So I'll put a pin on that and I'll come back to it. But the answer is no, it's not required. You may elect to do it, but it's not a distinct requirement.
Okay, I think that's all we've got for now.
Okay. We're ticking along well. I wonder whether I should just pause for a minute so people can have a stretch, and then I'll show you what the Victorians are doing and the Queenslanders and the South Australians, and then might give you some ideas on how you roll that out in New South Wales. But let's take a minute, stand up, have a stretch, fill up your water, and we'll just run through. We might finish a little bit early today, depending on how many questions or the like we have. But I'll give you a minute. Okay.
There's a good question that's come through, Ken.
I also see we've got a hand up as well, Kathy. So
Inundated. Okay, well, let's do typed question and then to the hand up. Okay, to date, New South Wales state and local projects rely on road safety audits undertaken by accredited auditors. Advocating a safe system assessment as an alternative is likely to have industry and professional implications. How have other states dealt with this paradigm shift?
Yeah, wonderful question. And I'm going to show you a couple of things that are happening in other jurisdictions on how this is being done. And I think that it's something we need to acknowledge that we've got a well-established industry of road safety auditors. Really, the idea is that you'll be able to complement the road safety audit process. It's not competing against it. And the reality is that the auditors, road safety auditors, are going to become safe system assessors as well. And that's what we're madly trying to do, is train up enough safe system assessors to be able to be helping out with these projects. So I don't think it's actually going to be a major paradigm shift for industry. It's just about getting an army of assessors and then doing some policy changes. But it is now in New South Wales being seen to start to be injected into projects with a road safety audit. So you do at the early stages, you do a safe system assessment's done and a road safety audit's done. Some other jurisdictions have moved to an approach where if you do that safe system assessment early on, it negates the need for the audit at that stage, and the audits come later down the track. New South Wales hasn't quite moved to that because of your policies and the like still stating that, but I think you'll move to that. But I don't think it's going to be a major issue because, as I say, the people who will be doing the safe system assessments are most likely to be the same people that would have done that road safety audit anyway. And it's just that they're using a slightly different methodology, skill set, and outputs.
Farouk's put his hand down, so just check if you want to put your hand up again. But another question or comment has come through. It's always a major risk to not have a site inspection. Too many remote decisions can happen without a wider view of what is actually happening on site rather than what the client has heard is of what is happening. I've had jobs in the past where the client has already committed to the treatment without an understanding of what the problem is, multiple exclamation marks. To finish off that comment.
I absolutely agree. And we do, I suppose, within this course, we insist you go to a site, and people are like, oh, I don't need to go to the site, or and I'm adamant. You've got to go to the site because you can't beat that on ground, seeing the issues live. Yep. So certainly from the Australian perspective, we mandate that. The rapid safe system assessment you'll see is utilised for these smaller projects, lower risk projects and the like, and then there was determination that just from a resource input perspective, it's not a requirement as such. And funnily enough, though, we do a lot of safe system assessing, both rapid and full, and 90% of our rapid ones we go to the site anyway. So it's much of a it's personal choice as well. But these are the kind of issues that need to be played out. How each jurisdiction decides to mandate these things and what specific elements is still to be played out. The Austroads framework itself doesn't go into any of this practical detail about how to do them, when to do them, or policy perspectives and anything like that. It's just, this is how the matrix works, and these are some treatments and how you categorize them into primary and supporting and those sorts of things. But on my screen here, I've just got the Victorian VicRoads website up, so similar to the RMS website or Transport for New South Wales website in lots of standards and guidelines and things in there. But they have this page on safe system engineering, safe system assessments, and you can see there they've got their guidelines, which we've given you a copy of in your memory stick and on Schoology if you're interested. It's got these two templates, so the rapid template and the full template. It's got the Austroads framework, and it's also got this register, VicRoads register of recommended safe system assessors. So it's a bit like the register of auditors, but this one's got a couple of little variations to it. So this is how you get onto this register, and you've got to have an interest in doing this, and you express your interest, and you've got to show then that you have a base level understanding of the safe system principles, and the assessment process. And so they suggest this course that you're currently undertaking or any equivalent course, and they want to see something there as that you've got that understanding, or maybe your CV or something that shows lots of experience in these spaces. Then you've got to actually go and do a safe system assessment, get first-hand experience, do the site inspection. So it's got to be a full safe system assessment. workshop, write-up, all of that stuff. Then you submit that in. And that's actually reviewed. And the way that I'm going to mark your safe system assessments that you put in, you get feedback, and there'll be a certain level that they expect to be achieved. And if that's not achieved, it's sort of given back, and you can have another crack at it. And then you get put onto the register. And so the list's here, and they've got some frequently asked questions. So the list is here, and it's just like the audit list, really. It's got a list of people, organizations, email addresses, and phone numbers. And the list is growing significantly. And I love that. I love the fact that it's up to sort of maybe 60 people on this list who have proven that they have the ability to undertake this process, inject safety. And the more we get of those, the more it's going to be accepted in industry as standard practice and things that can be done. So that's another way that you shift industry, is you skill up a whole lot of people, you incentivize them with some potential work out of it, and we're going to get people onto this list. So maybe New South Wales might consider going down a track like that. I think there's support from Transport for New South Wales for this course, which they're saying, well, if they've successfully completed the course, that's a pretty good indication, because this course has an assessment categorisation to it as well. The Queenslanders have got their policy, and it's mandated safe system assessments as part of the policy, and they're following a similar process. They don't have a register as such at the moment, but again, wanting to see people have completed this course. So the Victorians and the South Australians, the New Zealanders are at slightly different figures at the moment, but I hear they're just changing. But in terms of a policy perspective, saying any project less than $2 million should have a rapid safe system assessment where it's been determined that a formal assessment is required. Doing an assessment is optional, but when an assessment is not undertaken, it should be documented how the project has considered safe system alignment, and that should be submitted as well. So it's a pretty easy, you've got a logical way to show that. So why you wouldn't do a safe system assessment, I'm not sure. I suppose some of the reasons I'll come back to that. 2 million to 5 million, a full safe system assessment for complex projects with significant risk of fatal serious injury crashes, innovative projects, a rapid for projects with low risk, or any repeat safe system assessment. So remember when I said you do that, you might go back later down the track and redo it, but you do it rapid there. Safe system assessment is desirable for all projects. It's a preferred method, but where a safe system assessment is not undertaken, it should be documented again. And above $5 million, a full safe system assessment needs to be done. A rapid may be done as a reassessment after that full one's been done of any alterations or changes. And there's no sort of getting out of it. A safe system assessment must be conducted, and it's a full safe system assessment for these larger projects. And the difference, the big differences are, so the workshop is usually not required. So you just get an understanding of the scope and context through an email or something like that. The site inspection is optional, and within the rapid, it's idea is that a desktop could be done, and I agree with the point on the deficiencies of going down that approach. Consideration of the other elements of the safe system. So they're all our qualitative questions, and those wider things is not in the rapid as that specific entity. So they're the main differences. There's a little less reporting in a rapid safe system assessment as well. So you use the templates on that. But you still do the matrix for both. You still do recommended alterations to the project for both. So I reckon rapid's about 60% of the effort, or maybe 50.
got another hand up.
Oh, good.
It's me again.
Good.
Excuse me. Back in the early 90s, I guess, in New South Wales, when road safety audits were just starting out, one of the things that was similar to one of your slides a couple back there was that they had this overhead projector, I guess in those days, slide with a big triangle. And there were 3 elements that at that stage they said was how you would look about whether or not an auditor was suitable. And first of all, top of the thing said it was they were experienced in that field, I guess.
Yep.
The second one was they were qualified. And at that time we had no register, I guess. So that was a bit of a downfall.
Yep.
But the third and most important one perhaps was that they were available.
Oh,
if you had the other 2 but you're not available, well, you're not much use. So I guess that triangle of sort of a evaluation still is just apparent and applicable today to this process. And I think it's exactly what you've got here, perhaps with the availability issue at the back, but with 60 or so in your list in Victoria, I guess you'd eventually find someone.
Yeah. And that, I think, is going to be an important part of us getting this in. We need to get enough assessors out there. Even the audit one, I think that so the Western Australians have altered their way you stay on their register of road safety auditors, and there's a lot more to be done, and so they have a very small number of auditors. So it's building back up again, but you're right, the availability then became a major issue, and that they were, I was on their register and they were wanting to fly me out to Perth to do an audit of a splitter island or something. It was crazy. So availability is right, which is why I think we need to continue to build up enough of the industry. So you're all going to be able to do safe system assessments, and you've got your other jobs to do as well. So you're not probably going to have enough time to be out there doing lots of safe system assessments. So we need to get your support, your local consultants to be skilled up in safe system assessments, and others to be able to help out.
Yeah, I think so. You can mute me again.
Okay. Well, put your hand up again, Lance. We do like hearing from you. It's good. Okay. And Kathy, are there other comments, things coming in? I see some lights flashing.
There's a comment saying in WA, it's not what you know.
Right. ... Right. Is that it? Very good. Okay. Well, that sort of gets us to a point where I think we've done a decent job there of getting to understand how to do a safe system assessment, and you're in the midst of doing that. And as Kathy said, the quicker you can finish off your safe system assessment and lodge it in Schoology and finish off any quizzes that are outstanding, the quicker we can get you your certificate or provide you that feedback if you need to do a little bit more work to get you up to that competency level we're looking for. So if you're able to do that as soon as everything is you're in a position to be able to actually finish that off, please do so. The other thing, though, is that you will have now some experience in safe system assessing, but you're really only going to have it for one road environment. So I briefly want to just touch on some of the other road environments and what sort of features we'd expect to see that would align really highly with safe system principles. And the reason we want to do this is because I want you to go out and do safe system assessments on anything you can. Do sort of local shopping areas or major rural highways or anything in between. And so we just need to make sure that everybody's got some ideas for these different road environments on what could alter and could change. So I'm going to run through some road environments. I'm going to do it fairly quickly. I'll probably only pause on one or two of them to get you to write in a few ideas on what could improve alignment with safe system principles. So like we did with the movement of place exercise, you'll type in some ideas and say whether they influence exposure likelihood or severity. But we'll only do that for 1 or 2, and we'll give a little bit more time for questions at the end and a little wrap up, and we'll be done a little bit early to give you some time to do your last quizzes and get back and have a re-look at what needs to be finished for that safe system assessment. So I'll just have a look at residential shopping strips, mixed-use arterials, low volume and high volume rural roads, high volume out of suburban arterial style roads, major urban freeways and major rural highways. So some of these you will probably never be looking at, but that's okay. So residential environment. Well, why don't we, no, we won't do this one. Really the things that, you know, these are usually sort of 50 km/h default speed. So some of the things we'd be looking at is, well, is actual access off this road required? Can we somehow block that off so that this is not a through route? And that would influence the exposure to crashes. Then, you know, if we are keeping these sort of areas open, then we need to start to look at the speed and address the speed of through vehicles. And so that's going to influence the likelihood and the severity of crashes. And we know we can do that through local area traffic management features, and there's lots of info available on that sort of stuff. And then people often want to sort of remove car parking, and that can help in opening up sight lines and those sorts of things. But if you haven't complemented that with local area traffic management features, it can just increase speed. So people have a wider area and the speeds will go up. So there's some challenges associated with that. Also, I mean, thinking about community and behaviour in the community and what they're doing, and you know, using helmets and those sorts of things, a wider scope around that. Also, things we shouldn't forget. So those sorts of road environments, it's really about bringing speeds down again and trying to restrict them from these major throughput roads. Let's have a go at this one. Our first person that can tell me where this is can have a prize. It's in your state. And then I want you to type in anything that you think would reduce the exposure, the likelihood or the severity of crashes. What could be done? So anybody can tell me where it is. Oh, got some good ideas.
My absolute favourite answer and a prize is going to Cav is coals.
I love it.
Is it okay, I think we're going to give it to Meninda, who got in first with Bondi.
Yeah, we'll take Bondi. Yeah. It's Bondi
Okay.
Junction.
Yeah.
It's actually, if you have a close eye there, it's actually written there. The Coles was more obvious, though, as Cav said. But some good guesses. There's quite a few areas around Sydney with a similar look. But okay, let's now talk about what. So this is a place for people. It's recognised in your sort of Sydney movement place as a place for people. You've got the Bondi Junction train station access in through here. You've got shops. You've got activity. It's a 40 km/h. What do you call them? High HPAA, high pedestrian activity area. Yeah, HPAA. And it's a one-way there. That's two ways. It's got some buses and things through there. But let's have a look at what you're thinking. And remember to write whether it influences exposure, likelihood, or severity. Okay, seen some wonderful ideas coming through here. So got a number of people who are talking about a shared zone, and I think that's a wonderful sort of thing to be looking at, because as soon as we've identified that it's a place for people, these are the kind of questions we should be asking, is why are we still trying to make it very road vehicle orientated with the infrastructure setup? Can it be a zone where pedestrians have the priority, and it's less the vehicles have to go very slow, and it's less accessible, and that will influence the likelihood and the severity if we're getting speeds of vehicles really down. Another, Farouk there has even gone a step further, which I love to see, is to talk about, well, can we look back and say, do we need vehicles to actually go through here at all? Can it be exclusion from vehicles, so complete pedestrianize the area and influence the exposure to crashes? And that would be great. And that's a really good immediate first question to ask when you identify an area in a movement and place that it's a place for people. Say, okay, do we actually need vehicles through here at all? Are there alternate routes? Can we move people around? So then, though, if you've identified, oh, it does still need to do that, complementing with features to keep those speeds down, so raised areas and these sorts of things are really wonderful options as treatments. If the movement requirements under a movement in place have risen to the point where, you know, it's just on the edge of actually still being a place for people as such in that categorization, then you might go some distinct crossing points. So you might do raised, you know, crossing points on desire lines and the like, or whatever it is. But in general, the more a place for people, it's like the more that shared zone, the fully integrated cross anywhere, because you've got priority sort of theory comes out and plays quite nicely. Okay, so some really good ideas in there. So thank you, everybody. I'll run through a couple more, just realizing where we're at. Mixed use arterials. So again, another Sydney example, and it's sort of your classic mixed use arterial, really, isn't it? Where I think it's Oxford Street. Somebody might correct me if I'm wrong there. Priority sort of everywhere, really, isn't it? So in terms of, well, it's public transport priority, it's bike priority, it's also vehicle priority and pedestrian priority. And so we've got, you know, a lot of challenges there. The sort of reality is that we need to make a bit of judgment there. And if you're going to say all of those are equal priority, well, then the consideration really comes into your vulnerable road users, because they're the ones that are going to get the most injured or be killed in the incidents here. So you start to then alter things to protect your most vulnerable. But some simple things that are going to get better alignment with safe system principles in these sorts of circumstances are slowing people through the identified conflict points. Like, I would say raising these areas would be a really great treatment, because it would do two things. It would slow people at these identified conflict points, but it would also slow people on the major straight run through. So any, you know, crossing in mid-block areas would, the vehicles would be going at lower speeds. You can always work with, if the buses are, you know, worried about these raising, you can always have sort of separator there. So the bus may not be raised there, but it may be raised in other bits. So there's ways to work around that sort of stuff. Speed cushions there on the approach for the buses or the like. There are probably different ways that we've really used to thinking about these major arterial roads, but it's all being put on the table. Maybe thinking about creating facilities for bikes, separated facilities for bikes, I like the idea of sort of dwell on red scenarios. So at night when the clubs are pumping and you know, people are rolling out of the pubs and the like, that these signals just dwelled on red, so they're resting on red, and when vehicles pull up, then that drops to green, and then it goes straight back to red. So it's a very annoying, slow drive for vehicles through these areas if there's high levels of intoxicated pedestrians or the like. So there are a few sort of things, you know, in terms of the likelihood of crashes, looking at ensuring we've got nice crossing points, good sight lines, all that usual stuff that we pick up in road safety audits. Are there any comments or questions on this sort of one here? Yeah, pedestrians and their desire lines are, yep, it's just something we've got to accept and be designers about. I've got a good slide I probably won't have time to go and to find it and bring up, but you know, pedestrians are going to do what pedestrians are going to do, and they want to go from A to B in the shortest possible route, and they'll accept some risk accordingly, because for them it's, you know, they're in control and they're making these choices, and we've got to start designing and thinking about that. Oh, we have been in the past, but we've got to continue and do more about that. These types of roads are going to be our big challenge, I think. Those other sorts of areas, there's an appetite for change. There's an acceptance of expenditure to get us bigger outcomes. These sorts of roads, which we have just tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of kilometres of that we're dealing with, of this standard or lesser standard, and they're high speed, they're 100 kilometres per hour plus, and they've got, you know, 1,000 vehicles a day or 500 vehicles a day, and to invest in what we know would be really high alignment with safe system principles, which would just be continuous barrier systems down the middle and on the edges, we will never afford to do that. And so how do we address this? Well, a few things that I sort of come back to are, make sure we've done everything we can in the likelihood. So trying to seal shoulders, audio tactile edge line, audio tactile center line, guideposts are good, all of that sort of stuff. So get that likelihood score as low as we can, because that's what can be done relatively cheaply and easily. Then we're going to have to do probably a couple of things here. Look to the other elements of the safe system to try to assist us, and also manage speed. Speed's not going to be popular, and I don't think we can do that, you know, tomorrow or even next year. And we need a bigger picture, longer thought about this. But the physics of this and the acknowledgement of people making mistakes don't mix on these environments. 100 kilometres per hour here, and we've basically said under the safe system, you should be able to make a human mistake and not be killed or seriously injured. And a human mistake is falling asleep, is you know, being distracted by your kids screaming in the back or whatever. To get us to that is going to be, well, yeah, the ways we know to be able to do that at the moment are barrier systems, if you want the speeds to be up high, and we cannot afford that on these. Lots of, you know, rumble strips and edge lines are going to help in that likelihood, but the severity aspect is just incredibly hard to deal with. We can get a little bit more gain from speed limit reductions and trying to enforce those. I think we need to take the community on a big journey before we go down that track. And we need to work on vehicles, features, community education, behavioural change initiatives to try and get better outcomes. I think we've got some potential to start with maybe nighttime speed limits. So have an 80 at night, or at dusk and at night, 100 during the day. That might ease people into it, to understanding some of this sort of stuff, but it's very, very challenging. I'm sure I have great answers on this. The higher volume ones are going to be a bit easier. It doesn't look high volume, but it is high volume up in your sort of 3,000, 4,000 and up. Well, we know we're going to be putting continuous outside barriers or continuous center barriers, and just rolling that out over time. Supplemented obviously with audio tactile, edge line, center line, good guideposts, and the like. And when you get to intersections under those scenarios, trying to reduce speeds to within tolerable speeds and angles within tolerable levels, those two can complement each other really well if you've got the sort of strategic planning right. Where if you can put a roundabout here and you've put a central barrier system up the middle of your road for however long, any access points, they come down, they go around the roundabout, and they go back the direction they wanted to go. So you've got really great wins out of that. Obviously, lots of detailed work needs to be done into designs. How far can you make people travel? How do you treat other minor breaks and the like? But I think one other thing that you should be looking at in New South Wales, which hasn't been done at all or a lot of, I'd be happy to be corrected, is to influence the speed through these intersections on the main route. So lots of other jurisdictions doing loops on the side roads here, and then electronic speed reductions to 80 or 70 when a vehicle is approaching on the side road. And I dare say that, so they're proving to be very successful. Vehicles come up, they slow down only when there's a vehicle approaching. So we've been doing a lot of the design of those across lots of intersections in Victoria, and New Zealanders originally came up with the concept. And these major high volume outer suburban arterial duplications, the traffic sewers, as some people call them, really going to start to say, well, we can't mix vulnerable road users and 80km/h traffic. They need their own facilities. That should be built in from the start. We should be, if we want to keep speeds up, we've got to really almost start to look at some principles around turning this into more like a motorway style facility, continuous barriers, and heavily restricting access across by pedestrians, either through underpasses, overpasses, or limiting the way and making them go to different areas. And then still addressing any at-grade conflict points like these intersections and reducing the speed through those in one way or another. And our major freeways, well, really, they need to operate, they operate quite well from a safe system alignment perspective, continuous barrier systems. Any of the intersections are on-ramps, so the speed differential is not there, so they're traveling close speeds when they enter, the angles are good. These start to perform badly in terms of when the flow is starting to break down, and we get shock waves of traffic and rear end crashes and those sorts of things. So the best alignment with safe system principles in these is to have managed motorways where the speed varies according to the traffic, the way traffic is flowing and when it's about to break down. So we know those things from headways and those sorts of things. So you start to proactively reduce the speed before these incidents occur. And then if anybody breaks down, or people getting out of cars, broken down vehicles, or getting out of taxis for one reason or another in the middle of the night or whatever it is, you have the ability to block lanes to reduce speeds early on. And then our big major rural highway upgrades, Princess Highway, these sorts of upgrades, well, these sorts of massive cross sections aren't really required. But whatever we do, we want to be seeing these continuous barrier systems on both sides at a nice sort of 4 to 6 metre offset, and off into the distance. And that's how it's going to have to be. It's going to have to spend a bit of money, but these are where the bulk of our traffic is. So that's where you spend the money on the barriers to try to ensure that we can keep the speeds up. And some of those other roads, we might have to bring the speeds down because we can't afford to do those continuous barriers. And any intersection should be grade separated or need to be treated in a similar principles of reducing speeds and conflict angles and the like. You do also have the option of sort of having acceleration, big long acceleration facilities on these roads, and then comes up, and then there's some sort of turnaround facility and another acceleration lane back, because if we can get that speed differential down, we do well. The challenges you got on that are getting the space to accelerate all the way up and then change lanes, get into the middle and accelerate back. And then you've got to merge from the right challenge in the middle there. But that's been sort of semi-successfully done in quite a few locations. The idea of seagull treatments has generally been pretty well shown not to be a great one, because you don't get those lengths of acceleration and you still have this very harsh right angle conflict.
Ken, sorry, there's a comment from Tracy about on the Pacific Highway north of Newcastle, there are flashing lights facing traffic on the Pacific Highway when vehicles are entering the highway.
Yep. So they're good. So they're the active advanced warning signs, side activated warning signs. So there's just warning drivers. So that's a good start, and they've shown to be quite effective. The next generation are the same, except for instead of just those flashing lights to the Princess Highway, it will be a speed limit reduction, regulatory. And it'll be sort of 400 metres or before the intersection. You have electronic signs that flash on with 70 kilometres per hour speed limit as that vehicle's approaching, and until it clears from the intersection, and then the speeds will go back up to 100 or the like. Your next speed zoning guidelines will allow that sort of stuff. I should, if they get approved. I've seen definitely you've been heavily involved in that. But it's something I think you should be considering on some of those intersections until you can get the money to fix them with the infrastructure. So I think that's got us pretty close to where we wanted to be. I've got a couple of wrap-up things, and then I'll give. Hang on, have we got any other questions there?
Yeah, we've got a hand up, so we'll take that one. Cliff, did you mean to pop up your hand?
Yeah, hello.
Hello.
Yeah, look, sorry guys, I have to leave, but look, just a quick parting comment, Ken. Enjoyed the whole thing very much. My background, 45 years of local government, but what I wanted to mention, I also have been doing a lot of work with IPWA New South Wales. And I've been on the Roads and Transport Directorate for some time with my colleague Mick Savage. I think you may know Mick, Ken.
Yes.
I'd like to say and just table, particularly for my local government colleagues, a very good source document called A Guide to Preparing a Road Safety Strategic Plan. It has the support of Transport for New South Wales. It's very local government targeted, and I think to address those issues of getting buy-in, support by your council, which I think is essential for a cultural change, and even senior directors. So getting a higher emphasis and support of road safety in general, I'd highly recommend my local government colleagues get hold of this guide. It's a good tool, and I think it gives context excellently to the safe systems approach as well. It recognises safe systems, and I think there's a good fit. So it's just a parting comment, Ken. Thanks you very much, and Kathy, really enjoyed it. My colleague Lance, he's an old fart like me. I've known Lance for a long time, but I just like to say, you know, when you look at the hard stats of fatalities, crash injuries, all local governments have got hundreds and sometimes thousands of kilometres of local roads where when you look at the stats, and it certainly needs to get a higher focus. So thanks again, guys, and I'll leave you that and have a Merry Christmas.
Thanks, Cliff, and yeah, really great words and great advice to have a look at that report. And thank you for your words. And absolutely, in local government, you're very close to your community as well, so you're not only affected by the fact that the numbers are high, but they're also very much in your face of knowing the community members and those that are influenced. So thank you for that. Yeah, we're coming up to a close, but I do really encourage you to utilise the assessment framework. Please keep in contact. Tell me how you're going with it. If you want any advice, happy to happy to help out. If you have any challenges getting your assignments finished, let me know. Happy to have a one-on-one Zoom session with you to talk through issues or things that you haven't quite got clear in your mind. And otherwise, any administrative challenges, keep in contact with Kathy. We'll be sending you an email with your certificate once you've completed all your assignments. We'll also then be following that up with a pack with your any prizes, as well as a physical copy of the certificate. And we will be, trying to run this course again. So if you've got colleagues who are interested, we want to build that army of safe system assessors. We'll have to get some of your local consultants trained up so they can be helping out when the resources are low. So we'll be providing you with information when it's running, and we hope that you will share it with others. So thank you very much. Thank you, Kathy, for all your work behind the scenes.
Thank you, Ken, and a shout out to Chantal and Bonnie, who arranged it all from the other end. So terrific job, guys. Thank you for having us, and thank you, Ken. Your passion for the area is very infectious, and so I hope you're starting to build that army in New South Wales.
Yeah, there's lots of passionate New South Wales people, and we just need practical ways to get the passion on the ground. So thanks, everybody. Have a great day. Catch you at the next course.
Terrific. Bye.